The Resilience Form, the Way of the Mynock. The first and most basic description of Soresu was provided in the Lightsaber article written by David West Reynolds and Jack Bobo, and published in Star Wars Insider 27. The version I'm presenting here is slightly abridged. The third great lightsaber discipline was first developed in response to the advancement of blaster technology in the galaxy. As these weapons spread widely into the hands of evildoers, Jedi had to develop unique means of defending themselves. Form 3 thus arose from laser blast deflection training. Over the centuries, it has transcended this origin to become a highly refined expression of non-aggressive Jedi philosophy. Form 3 maximizes defensive protection in a style characterized by tight, efficient movements that expose minimal target area compared to the relatively open style of some of the other forms. True Form 3 masters are considered invincible. As described in the Jedi Path, Soresu is the most inward-directed of all forms. You are to be the calm eye of the storm as your enemies rage about you. The core discipline of Soresu was, for all intents and purposes, the core discipline behind Jedi philosophy, taking the concepts laid out by Shicho and refining them. Where Shicho was wild, Soresu was tranquil. He doesn't even need to reach into the Force. He has already let the Force reach into him. The Force flows over him and around him as though he has stepped into a crystal pure waterfall lost in the green coils of a forgotten rainforest. When he opens himself to that sparkling stream, it flows into him and through him and out again, without the slightest interference from his conscious will. The part of him that calls itself Obi-Wan Kenobi is no more than a ripple, an eddy in the pool into which he endlessly pours. This is why he can simply stand, why he can simply wait. He has no need to attack or to defend. There will be battle here, but he is perfectly at ease, perfectly content to let the battle start when it will start, and let it end when it will end, just as he will let himself live or let himself die. This is how a great Jedi makes war. It's not for nothing that Soresu is considered the ultimate expression of Jedi pacifism. Soresu's physical technique is detailed in the original Lightsaber article, in the Jedi Path, in the Revenge of the Sith novelization, and many others, and they all say the exact same thing. It's a defense-oriented martial art based around tight, efficient moves intended to maximize defensive coverage. Effectively an expansion on the basic blast deflect training of Shicho, Soresu was extremely simple in moveset and application, and so restrained that it was downright passive. Because all of the descriptions of Form 3 are so straightforward and minimal, reflective of the style itself, most of what can be understood of the intricacies of Form 3 technique is gleaned from observation of it in action. It's all about rapid transition between various static blocking positions, staying perfectly centered, perfectly balanced, blade never moving a millimeter more than was necessary. Practitioners of the style could be quite agile when necessary, oftentimes employing roving tactical retreats, though just as often they planted themselves and held their ground as an immovable rock. The main criticism of the Soresu technique was its lack of a proper offensive component, though in my view, this is only half true. In the Revenge of the Sith novelization, Obi-Wan Kenobi was described as riposting with flickering strikes and stabs swifter than the tongue of a Garolian ghost viper, and in the Darth Bane trilogy, Darth Zana is described as following up deflection parries with quick counters. This approach is clearly demonstrated in Old Ben Kenobi's final duel with Darth Vader, where he frequently engages Vader's blade and tries to slide in attacks. It's not that Soresu has no offensive component, it's that its offensive component is completely based around reactive counterstrikes. It has no dedicated attack sequences. The opening stance of Soresu was first identified in the Force Unleashed novelization, a backhand position facing the opponent side on, blade and offhand extended forwards towards the opponent. Two variations on this stance are presented. The example stance in Star Wars lightsabers features the blade and offhand both extended downwards, while the version presented in the Jedi Path has the blade extended diagonally across the chest, facing the opponent square on, the offhand still extended forwards, but with the arm bent. Next, we have the Form 3 brace stance, first detailed in the Attack of the Clones visual dictionary. The blade was held in a two-handed parry position on the dominant side, facing the opponent square on, with the forward leg extended off to the side. Mysteries of the Jedi presented a variation on this position, where the swordsman faced the opponent side on, blade held high in a drop parry position. I suspect the example stance provided in the Essential Guide to the Force is yet another variation, facing the opponent almost rearwards, blade extended downwards alongside the head. Live combat maneuvers were detailed in the Jedi Academy training manual. The first is the Circle of Shelter, a twirling defensive velocity intended to create a safe zone around and behind the swordsman, protecting his allies. The Jedi Path describes it as a moving meditation, and one that can facilitate precognitive visions and foresight. The other maneuver is the Deflecting Slash, a combination defense and counter intended to deflect an incoming blaster shot and in the same movement, strike an adjacent target. The Jedi Path also describes deflecting slashes as being used to perform aimed blast deflections, though this technique typically falls under the purview of Form 5. Darth Traya had this to say about Soresu, and I quote, "A defensive technique, but effective. Use it if you do not wish to be hit, or if you are facing many opponents with blasters. With a lightsaber blade and enough skill in deflection, it is an excellent offense against blasters, but in other situations, it merely delays the inevitable." As illustrated by Traya's commentary, the basic application of Soresu is effectively a stall tactic, and nowhere is this better illustrated than in Darth Zana's style. As described in Darth Bane Rule of Two, during their confrontation with the Jedi on Tython, Zana was perfectly content to play a passive role, simply fending off her own set of adversaries while waiting for Bane, functionally invincible with his lightsaber-resistant Orbalisk armor, to steamroll his opponents and come to her aid. Things did not turn out that way, and Zana was almost slaughtered by the up-and-coming Jedi Swordmaster Saro Zaj, surviving by dint of luck rather than skill, only able to delay the inevitable. In my view, Darth Zana only attained a pure technical mastery of the form, never grasping the core philosophy, and so, even at the height of her prowess, she never overcame these weaknesses. A true master-level demonstration of Soresu is provided by Obi-Wan Kenobi in Revenge of the Sith, as detailed in the novelization. Shortly before Obi-Wan Kenobi departed for Utapau, he and Mace Windu were discussing the fighting capabilities of the cyborg General Grievous, and during this exchange, Windu stated his belief that Kenobi was the best optimized to defeat Grievous, crediting Kenobi as the reigning master of Soresu. When Kenobi, humbled to a fault, objected, Windu responded with this: "I am called a great swordsman because I invented a lethal style. But who is greater, the creator of the killing form or the master of the classic form?" During Kenobi's subsequent confrontation with Grievous, the cyborg employed an extra set of mechanical arms to attack Kenobi with 4 lightsabers. The combat computers slaved to his brain, allowing him to effectively coordinate the weapons and unleash a withering assault of 12 strikes per second. Not one touched him. After all, he had often walked unscathed through hornet swarms of blaster fire, defended only by the Force's direction of his blade. Countering 12 blows per second was only difficult, not impossible. His blade wove an intricate web of angles and curves, never truly fast but always just fast enough, each motion of his lightsaber subtly interfering with 3 or 4 or 8 of the general's strikes, the rest sizzling past him. his precise, minimal shifts of weight and stance slipping them by centimeters. Grievous, snarling fury ramped up the intensity and velocity of his attacks, 16 per second, 18, until finally, at 20 strikes per second, he overloaded Obi-Wan's defense. So Obi-Wan used his defense to attack. Kenobi's defeat of General Grievous was a perfect demonstration of the quintessential Soresu tactic as outlined in the Jedi Path. Let mounting fatigue or frustration do the work for you. In essence, buckle down, wait him out. Like Shicho, the simplicity of the Soresu form made it easily adapted for alternative weapon variants, and we've actually seen it applied to dual blades and saber staffs. As featured in one of the worst episodes of Star Wars The Clone Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi used dual sabers for blast deflection against the bounty hunter Cad Bane, and wielded his offhand weapon with a reversed grip. While Kenobi used each blade one at a time, the impression I'm under is that a Soresu practitioner who specialized in dual blades would likely use the reversed grip to cover his lower body, and keeping the two blades pointed in opposing directions would curb the risk of them tangling. As for the double-bladed lightsaber, the example we have is the description of Darth Zana's fighting style presented in the Darth Bane trilogy, where he encouraged her to cycle her weapon through constant twirling spins to facilitate deflection parries. With both weapon sets, the extra blade provided more surface area for blocking and parrying, reinforcing the Form 3 defense. However, in my view, the Soresu form fails to use either weapon to their full potential. All you've done is make your impregnable defensive style more impregnable. Whoop-de-fucking-do. In my view, the most orthodox demonstration of Soresu technique in live combat is provided by the Master-Apprentice team of Luminara Unduli and Barasafi in the Clone Wars microseries. The most heavily featured Soresu specialist in Star Wars media is Obi-Wan Kenobi, who appears in the flesh in 4 out of the 6 films, though it is specified that he did not employ Soresu in the Phantom Menace. The portion of the Lightsaber article that I edited out at the start of the video, I will present here, and it reads as follows. Obi-Wan Kenobi takes up a dedication to Form 3 after the death of Qui-Gon Jinn, who favored Form 4, since it was apparent to Kenobi that Jinn's defense was insufficient against the Sith techniques of Darth Maul. Even in his elder years, Kenobi remains a formidable Form 3 practitioner. Another noteworthy figure is Darth Zana, one of the villain protagonists of the Darth Bane trilogy of novels.